Good morning, dear students. Usually, it is a conception that history is about events happened in the ancient times or are very, very old. Now, we have studied ancient history, medieval history, and then we have studied something like relatively modern history, the history of modern times, that is, of 20th century. But tell me, dear students, is history only about things or events that happened hundreds of years ago? Events happened, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago is also a part of history. So, not necessarily history has to be about earlier or ancient times. History is about past events, and that could be 1 year ago also. Dear students, the history discussed in Standard Ninth textbook is modern history, post independence history. It is about the events that took place after 1947 in India. So, welcome to post independence history of India. We will now start with the first lesson, sources of history. Okay, so, how do we find out about people or events that happened in earlier times? Maybe we were not born then. So, what can be done to learn about past events? Some written documents, construction of that period, some old songs, or anything which helps us to learn about past events are sources of history. So, sources of history are those references that help us to understand what had happened during those times. The sources of modern history are broadly classified as number one, written sources, documents, stamps, letters, newspapers, etc., are written sources of history. Similarly, sources like coins, toys, ornaments, weapons, etc., become material sources. Oral sources like stories passed from one generation to the other, folk songs, etc. And we also have audiovisual sources like old photographs, audio recording, or videos. So let us learn now how these sources help us to understand our history better. Begin with written sources. Sources available in the written form which help us to know about the events that took place in the past are known as written sources. First is newspaper. Newspapers are being printed for the last 150 to 200 years. Reading them helps us to know facts of that time. Now, periodicals. Periodicals are magazines. Unlike newspapers, which are on daily basis, periodicals are made available after a week or twice a week or monthly likewise. Since they are made available after a period of time, they are called periodicals. Now, diaries. Diaries written by a known personality or a person who holds a position in the society help us to know about his personal life, his endeavors, etc. Like Anne Frank's diary, Hitler's diary, etc. So, these popular diaries become a source of reference for history later on. Reference books. Some important books written at the time, like The Wealth of Nations, Arthashastra, The Prince, The Social Contract, etc. Books like these help us to understand about the social, economic, and political situation of that period. Correspondence. Correspondence means letters. Now we have letters written by Indira Gandhi to Jawaharlal Nehru or letters written by Mahatma Gandhi or Mountbatten. Now these letters become a source of history. It helps us to know the purpose or the reason for taking a particular decision or etc. In archives. What are archives? Some they have some resemblance to the museums. Now, what do we find in the museum? Materials belonging to earlier times, right? Similarly, archives preserve old historical documents with great care. The main office of the National Archives of India is at New Delhi. The National Archive of India is one of the largest archives in Asia. Government gazettes. Government gazettes. Now, gazette means an official order or a legal notice. For example, Britishers had issued an order stating that India would be declared independent on 15th August 1947. Now, that official order has become a historical document. So, government gazettes are orders which were passed. They also become a source of history. Postage stamps. Postage stamps are very important. They are not only meant for revenue, the photographs on them reflect on that period. For example, a stamp issued on PT Usha means that her achievements, say in 1980s, have been acknowledged. Or say a stamp with agricultural crops display importance given to a farmer. Or a stamp depicting, say, soldiers. That must be so in order to boost the morale of soldiers or a tribute paid due to the war that happened in that year. So the pictures on the postage stamps give us an idea of what had happened during that particular period of time. Encyclopedias. Just as the dictionary is a collection of words, similarly, encyclopedia is a collection of information about different topics. The topics can be from various fields or it can relate to one particular field. We know Wikipedia, right? Just as Wikipedia informs us about the things on the internet, likewise, information provided to us in the form of a book is called encyclopedia. Sources are the written sources of history. like newspapers, periodicals, diaries, reference books, correspondence, documents in archives, government gazettes, postage stamps, and encyclopedia. Let's now discuss the first and one of the most important sources of history, that is, newspapers. We all know that newspaper belongs to a domain called media, and media is called the fourth pillar of democracy. The first is legislative, second is executive, third judiciary, and the fourth is media. Media has been the flow of information. To transfer the information of the government to the people or of the people to the government is the responsibility of the press or media. Almost till the year 2000, we did not have any other alternative to newspaper. Yes, it is true that news were being telecasted on the TV, but still, newspaper was the most important source to get oneself updated. Post 2000, things changed rapidly due to the onset of internet. Now, information was available at the click of a finger. One would easily have an access to information across the globe. This had an impact on newspaper. Newspaper helps us to gain knowledge about national and international affairs, politics, arts, sports, literature, and social and cultural affairs. India is a country of multiple languages. So it is not that we have newspapers in Hindi and English only. There are newspapers available in regional languages as well. Say, for example, we have the Times of India, which is in English. Then we have a Hindi edition, which is Navbharat Times. And we also have Maharashtra Times in Marathi. So, we have newspapers in regional languages to serve the local masses also. Now, these newspapers also have supplements which comes along with the newspaper, say once a week. For example, a health supplement will give information about food, exercise, etc. related to health. So, supplements don't provide us with news, but rather extra information for the readers. From newspapers, we have newsletters, which are summary of a particular organization which work for a cause. Then we have special editions at the end of the year, that is, last week of December or first week of Jan, that gives us a summary of the events that took place in that year. We have learned that history is not only about ancient history, but also the account of events that have happened a few years ago, that is of recent past. We need sources to study history. That could be written, oral, material, or audio visual. Written sources are of different types. We have learned about 9 of them. Newspaper has always been important, though the onset of internet did have an impact on it. Newspapers also have supplements, periodicals, newsletters, and yearbook. Now, students, go through this section of your lesson and read it well. We will continue with the lesson in the next part. Thank you.